split siblings.
Mhm.
And I said, there's a ton of nuances with it.
Go ahead and get started, Superintendent.
Thank you, President Julie King. Appreciate that. We are excited today to be in study session to share with the board some thoughts about our alternative online programs. It will be both kind of an awareness of what is presently in place and the great outcomes that we achieve as a result of that, and then some possible considerations that we might want to consider and be aware of for future reconfiguration. So they team has put together a presentation. We reviewed it, given some feedback. They've come back and re-presented. So we'll turn it over to Scott and have you introduce the team, and we'll go from there.
That's great. Thank you. This is exciting. There's been a lot of hours put into this, and you guys already know this, but the level of dedication of our alternative school leaders that I'll introduce in just a second is top tier. They're amazing people. They care about kids. They care about the programs they run, and they really have a strong belief in what they do makes a difference. And they work very hard at it, and you can see numbers of growth and success that they've had over the years that's a tribute to their work and their staff's work. I'm confident that although you're going to see the leadership here, I'm pretty sure your staffs are probably watching as well. They're there as well, so
maybe
hello.
they're gathering, just kidding.
They're gathering as well. But this has been
pitchforks.
This has been a bit of a labor of love to put this together, because although Blaine's been involved in a number of presentations, sharing information, technology was a big one. And I think that was a lot of details, a lot of recommendations, a lot of things that each district needs to consider. It's surpassed greatly by the complexity of the alternative school world, because it involves so many kids, it involves so many people, employees, and it involves just a lot of heart and emotion of progress towards helping support kids and individual needs. So hours and hours and hours have been spent putting this together. Lynn and Blaine, Dr. Edmond, he's the supervisor over the alternative schools. Lynn Garrett is the director over the alternative schools. We have spent countless hours as us going over this report. Take this out, put this in, what about that? Take it out, wait, put it back in, that kind of stuff, to make sure that we're thorough of covering all points of the alternative world, to make sure it's a fair analysis of what's happening, but also give you a couple of good recommendations or options that could be supportive of the three configurations and possibilities there. So that being said, you've also got Gina Witt, Alpine Online, raise your hand over there. Matt Rowe, and his mustache is from East Shore. Hannah Figueroa.
You promised that would be gone by
Now I'm full of regret.
If you mustache Matt a question, feel free. It's open season. So. Hannah is over at Polaris. Figueroa, right?
Figuerito.
Yes.
Ugh.
Said like
Get
it
it.
was said like an American.
Dan Violo is our director over Summit. Kit Bromley is over Adult Ed. And then, of course, I mentioned Lynn, director of alternative schools, and then Dr. Blaine Edmond, our supervisor. So that in mind, Blaine and Lynn.
Okay, great. We are so grateful for the time. There are so many things to be considered right now in the district, and there's lots of different groups who would love time to present to you, so we're really grateful for this time. We have worked hard to try to gather accurate information, and much of what we've done is just to try to think through different options that we could present to you of ways that in a reconfiguration we can move forward. Please know that we've gone into this with our eyes open, trying to say what are all the possible options that are available, and we've considered a lot of different things. There's really been two main driving factors as we've considered these options. One is how can we create or maintain options for our students. Our alternative schools and programs and online schools and programs serve students that need different services than our traditional school, and how can we how can we maintain those services or create new services for students? That is by far the driving factor. We've also considered how can we best take care of our educators that do such a great job in these schools. And that's a second consideration. As we've talked to our educators, they have all told us, we are appreciative that you are considering us, but please put number one. Take care of the kids first, and then worry about us after. And it's been heartwarming to see their attitude as we've talked to them about these things. Most of all, really appreciate the team here, and really appreciate Lynn. He does such a great job leading this team. And so I'm going to turn some time over to Lynn to kind of start talking through.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. We're going to talk about first the online options, and then towards the end we'll talk about the alternative schools to Summit and Polaris. And we like to trying to have most time spent with Summit and Polaris. So we're going to go through these thoroughly, but somewhat quickly. So we're going to talk about East Shore, Adult Ed, Alpine Online, and Explore. And think of a continuum of services. These online options are the most flexible options we have in the district, really. We have students who can't go to school because of mental or physical issues, and all sorts of issues that they need these online options. And then when we talk later today about the schools, Summit and Polaris, those are our more structured and most supportive schools. So first, I'm going to talk about East Shore to begin with. Most of our online options have some connection to East Shore. Not all, but most do. So there's several reasons why students take online options. Sometimes they missed a credit, or they didn't do well in a class, so they're remediating, or sometimes they want an extra band class, so they want to free up their schedule, so they take an online class. Or sometimes they just don't like that teacher, the only teacher that offers that in their school, so they take an online class. There's a lot of reasons. This last year we had between 7,000 and 8,000 students in Alpine take online courses. Most of those were high school students. Consider this, we had about 6,100 graduates in Alpine last year. So we had more students take online stuff than we had graduate last year. Raise your hand if you know someone that's taken an online class. Okay, so we're familiar with those. Some of those are our kids, some are our neighbors. Lots of reasons. We got skipped it. Good. Oh well. This is just a partial list of some of the districts around us. You'll notice that most districts around us have an online option. Down at the bottom, there's a few that we've listed that don't. Some of our neighbors to the south, Nebo and Pueblo, don't anymore. They used to. But most districts have an online option for their kids. So East Shore is an asynchronous option. So students can pick it up whenever. They can start a class over a break, over a weekend. They can start at any time, open entry, open exit. There's no deadlines, and they serve students 9 through 12. And that's what most of our online options are focused on. 44 courses are offered at East Shore, and amongst those courses, lots of separate units. So students could graduate just doing East Shore credit. Again, original, remediation, or additional credit offered. And one of the things that makes our online option, East Shore, so unique is that the teachers who are teaching it created the courses. And they wanted to make sure they had courses that were engaging and interactive. So a student who's taken a course gets a lot of opportunities through that course to get feedback from the teachers. Assignments are graded. Remember way back 30 years ago when they had, this was the packet, remember? And we had programs like, well, Target and other programs that had paper packets. The only feedback they got was when they were finished unless they went and sought it out. Well, now, along the way, several assignments are graded along the way, and they're getting feedback all along the way. And they can get on and send a message to the teacher, get on a chat with the teacher, they get a lot of help. Here's an example of a science course, just a snapshot science course. It's interactive, trying to engage students, make it more interesting, and get them involved in the curriculum. Some of the programs that we have in Alpine that depend on East Shore is Adult Ed, which we'll talk about in a minute, and Explore. Explore we'll talk about also. And even though our state options, SOEP, continues, our involvement in SEOP gets larger and larger every year, our East Shore involvement gets larger and larger every year. It seems like we had a really peak during COVID of online use, then it went down, and now we're growing again dramatically. Okay, I want you to look at these stats if you would. 50% of all ASD graduates have East Shore credit on their diploma, on their transcript. And 1 in 6 graduates in the month of May of their senior year had credit earned through East Shore. Now, it's not just pointing out the procrastinators. We are very involved in our district. This is very much part of our district to have students get involved in East Shore. So just wanted you to see that and see how entrenched that is in our culture.
Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about how East Shore operates and the finances and how that all works, because that's key to thinking about how we might be able to move forward in this area. One of the things to point out is we've talked about the programs in our district. There is another program that's significant in our district. It's just not run by us. Our state online education program, and Lynn referred to that. That is there's 6 or 7 different providers in the state that work with the state. Our students are able to sign up for state online education credit, do work. It's free to them. And then what happens is those students are enrolled at our school, and then we pay, the state bills us every year for the amount of credit and the amount of effort that the students have put into those. And so that is another big player, and we have a lot of students doing SOEP, not as much as East Shore, but that is another big player. So when we show that other districts don't have an online program, what that generally means is what they have is a state online education program, and they're just relying on that to provide online education for their students. So a couple things to remember. East Shore is not a school, it's a program. So it's not funded like a school. Students remain enrolled at their home school. So a student's half-time at East Shore and half-time at their home school keeps that student in enrollment full-time, because we want that school to still provide counseling and other services for the student. But East Shore is not funded through any WPU or any kind of account like that. Don't receive trust lands, TSSA, SPED, CT funding through East Shore. East Shore has collected fees, $100 registration fee, and then $5 per 1/8 of a credit, and that's waived if they finish it within 30 days. So if we get somebody in and they keep moving along, then they don't have to keep paying the fees. Those fees have covered approximately 30% of the operational costs. So 70% are funded from district funds. So that is a big cost, but we try to be as efficient as possible, and we'll show a little bit how that works out. East Shore has 1 admin, Matt. We have 1.5 teacher FTEs, a secretary. We have a developer that works with East Shore, and then the other 16 teachers are non-contract positions, and we compensate them based on a block, which is basically anticipation of how many students they're going to work with throughout the year, and then some compensation for them to continue to develop their courses and make it better. We also have a number of hourly employees, help desk employees. We have virtual digital curriculum coordinators and others that just help students along the way to get enrolled and to keep them moving along.
Can you describe the virtual digital?
Sure. So we have, in every high school, we have digital curriculum classes where a student can go to a class, they take it for say B4 or B8, and in that class they're working on East Shore credit. In that class we have what's called a digital curriculum coordinator. We have some students who are taking most of their credit through East Shore and they can't fit one of those classes in their schedule, or they can't go to school. And so then we have what we call virtual DC coordinators. So we assign them to somebody, they work under Matt's direction, and they are contacting the parents and the students frequently and saying, you need to test on this packet, how are you doing there? Making sure that we're keeping them up and moving. So
You're on-site.
they're on-site at East Shore, but they're doing most of their work virtually with parents and students. It fills some of the gap that we lost when the Focus Center went away, because the Focus Center was helping some of these students in that role.
You said we have DC coordinators at each school. Is that each high school, or does that include junior highs?
We have some junior highs with DC classes. They generally, the ones that have those, will open those up second semester, because you don't have any students really behind towards graduation until second semester. But then we do have a number of junior highs that have DC classes second semester, and then all of our high schools have some form of a DC class. And we generate a lot of the credit at East Shore by having students in those DC classes where they have an adult that's really mentoring them and helping them along. So this slide kind of goes through some of the finance. I'm not going to go through line by line. That first group is East Shore. It shows you how many credits, what our operational costs were, what our fees collected were, what our net cost was if you subtract out the fees. So what our cost per credit is, just under $300. If you took away the fees, so if next year we decide we don't want to have any fees, which is probably something to consider because SOEP doesn't have any fees, would be around $430. This was 23-24, so it's our last full year that we can pull credit. That next group was SOEP. They awarded 1,600 credits or so to ASD students. Their cost per credit was $846 per credit. So we feel great about the efficiency with which we're running East Shore to be able to provide credit. Just as another comparison, summer school awarded about 1,600 credits, about the same as SOEP, and their cost was about $550. That might vary a little bit. It's a little apples to oranges because we do have some grade changes that took place in summer school that might not have been fully counted there. But our summer school and our East Shore are considerably more efficient than the SOEP. Not that SOEP is not a great option for some kids, and where that works well, we want to make sure we continue to have that as an option. That last line is if East Shore wasn't there and all of that East Shore credit was through SOEP, what that cost would be. So just to kind of give you those ideas. So there is a significant financial picture here to understand when it comes to East Shore. It's a lot of information. Any questions about any of that?
Really
Yes.
quick, Blaine, how do we compare with other districts? I know you linked a bunch of different ones, but as far as our cost per credit, how do we compare to other online programs?
That is a great question, and I don't have all of those answers. I don't know if they all count their costs exactly the same, and the programs are very different. So, for example, Jordan District, theirs is not an open entry, open exit, asynchronous program. They run online schools. So you sign up for online classes, you have a first quarter class, everything's due by the end of the quarter. An hour a week, you're in a synchronous kind of Google Meet setting. But they also don't allow some of the above and beyond credit that we allow. So it's a little bit hard to count. We can try to find out some of that information, but it's not necessarily ready to, I mean, it took us a while to even figure out our own. So we can try to get some of that. I have compared cost per credit. I've talked to a vendor that just will come into districts and say, we'll either provide the curriculum and you provide the teachers, or we'll provide the whole thing. And they were around $900 a unit as well when you go third-party vendors. So
is that similar to like when we did the thing through BYU? So when you say vendor, do you mean similar to that?
I'm talking about a company that comes in and says, we'll just become your vendor. We did that with BYU Independent Study.
Right.
I don't have the financials on that. I know we didn't have as many
But it
students
wasn't
doing that.
successful, right? Like people didn't use that the way we thought it would.
I don't think we had as many people taking BYU Independent Study as we thought might take that.
Do you have a breakdown of like the percentage of classes that are remediation versus taking it as an alternative? I guess number of credits.
Matt probably has a better sense of that than I do. I don't know if we have the exact numbers, but
Yeah. Yeah, without the exact numbers, we're about in a 55%, 45%.
Oh, okay.
55 meaning, we kind of categorize a few things as accelerators. That doesn't always mean they're trying to graduate early, but they're usually either getting ahead or replacing a credit that they would normally take in person, with about 45% of them remediating the course, so just a little bit above on the acceleration.
Thank you.
thanks, Matt.
Sorry, and you mentioned non-synchronous, meaning students work in isolation, not with a cohort, or?
Yeah, asynchronous means I can get on at midnight and I work on it and then I submit it and the teacher gets on 12 hours later and grades it. And
Oh,
synchronous would mean
with the teacher.
Synchronous would mean at 2 o'clock we're both getting on a call and we're actually talking synchronously. This is a breakdown of East Shore credit by new district areas. So you can see that Central is the group that has the most credit from last year. And that this is a similar pattern to what we're seeing this year so far. But it is used extensively in all three areas, but we have had more. I think there are, well, I don't know the exact reasons for that. So. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about options. With all that background, option one would be that we try to support, as three districts together, East Shore to continue to serve all three districts for a period of time. So one of the three districts could likely be Central, because that's where they're physically located, would run East Shore, but it serves other districts based on a shared service agreement. We would envision that probably till at least 2030. That gives 3 years of the new districts with a 1-year deadline. So wherever we put that endpoint, we'd say at least a year in advance, districts would have to declare, do we want to continue this or are we going to go our own way? Operational costs, we believe, could remain fairly consistent. Each year, the overall costs and credit would be calculated just like we did before. Total cost, total credit, it's cost per credit, and then the hosting district could just bill the other districts. That is very similar to what SOEP does. We do all this credit through SEOP, and at the end of the year, they send a bill to business services and say, you owe us $1.3 million. Their formula is a little bit more complex. They charge when students enroll in the course a certain amount, and then when they finish the course another amount. Because we're 1/8 of a credit, I think it would just be simple to say, we'll just charge for completed credit. But that could all be, negotiated. But this would be one option that we could continue. It would give all of the districts till at least 2030 to get on their feet and kind of develop their own philosophies for online education without seeing this dip where we have so many students that are depending on East Shore credit and the worries about if that were taken away, what that might do as far as graduation rate and cost and all these other things.
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as the curriculum that's been developed in-house in a district division, who do you say owns things like that?
That's a great, the curriculum could be shared, and it's actually the first point here.
Okay.
And the next
Sorry.
option, you just led into that perfectly, so thank you. The next option is each district could create their own online high school program. They could share the existing curriculum, but that is much more complex than it sounds like it might be. Because our teachers have created that content and are the ones that are teaching it, and they put so much interactive, it's not as easy as just copying a course and sending it to the new LMS system. There's a lot of connections there that have to be rebuilt. There's a lot of work that would have to do. So some of the online, like I talked about a vendor, they've built their curriculum for really any teacher to be able to teach this. That is not how East Shore's been built. That's not to say you couldn't have other teachers teach it. It just wouldn't be out of the box, plug and play simple. It would take some work to copy those courses and to establish all of those tools and connections and work across districts.
So, because there are 16 teachers that work with East Shore, I'm anticipating at any given time one teacher flows out and another teacher flows in. How do we handle that transition of curriculum when that happens?
So that is a situation where a new teacher comes in and uses the curriculum of the old teacher. Generally, in our courses, there is only 1 or 2 teachers at East Shore that are teaching those courses. So there is a learning curve when they first come in. Some of the online programs we see, they'll have a number of teachers, and maybe it's teachers that are teaching full-time in the day and they just want to earn a little extra money at night, so we're paying them X amount of dollars for every kid that they get through, and they're not really doing this as their main, just as kind of a side gig. Our current curriculum would be very difficult to run as a side gig because of the complexity a little bit. It's a little bit easier if you have dedicated teachers that are using that full-time. It's probably the best way to describe it. It doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It just means that our curriculum wasn't really made to scale across many teachers.
And I apologize, because my experience with it was Alpine Life and Learning years and years ago, and at that point, the teachers just came in the evening and they also had contract positions throughout
Correct.
the district during the day. That is no longer
That is
this.
no longer the case.
These are 16 teachers, but they're not allocated an FTE when we allocate FTEs.
Correct. So they're on a little bit different compensation plan, where we compensate them through blocks. It's probably a whole nother presentation, but they get some flexibility in their teaching. I mean, they often they have families they're taking care of during the day, and they do this in the evenings. But they are dedicating a significant portion of time. None of them are teaching in a traditional classroom full time and then doing this on the side. So, and they are a dedicated group.
And what is the turnover rate on those 16 teachers?
That's probably, I've been here as kind of finishing a 3rd year. I've hired 4 new teachers. And maybe if I could just expand on one thing, grading portion was a science teacher, and the grading portion of what we hired for was given to another teacher to grade during that time, while we onboard a new teacher and learn the curriculum and learn so that they get familiar with that part of it first rather than just diving into the grading. Because that's a significant portion of what we do is developing the curriculum. So we gave them about 6 months to do that first before we add students to them.
So they developed new curriculum, or it took them 6 months to learn the existing curriculum?
Learn the existing and develop one unit of what an old unit that they would have redone themselves. So there's kind of an ongoing curriculum development plan for each one of these. So as we look at older things, we're just trying to continually renew.
Because of that, there's some great things about East Shore, but obviously that has pluses and minuses.
So Blaine, really quick, you have an option where we, like all 3 districts use the same program, and then one where we each do our own. Have you considered an option where one of the districts chooses their own and the other 2 stay together?
That obviously is an option. There are so many permutations of options. So you could say 2 of the districts want to stay together. We could do that and keep that, and then another district would go off on their own and use another full service. They could hire it out, they could build their own, they could do a number of different things. So that's all going to depend, of course, on the districts and what they decide. One of the things to remember is that our instructors are offered based on the scale that what we have. So if it was each district doing their own, it would be significantly smaller programs. Those teachers would be difficult to work for 3 places at once, and we would lose many of our instructors, and we'd lose some of the efficiency, and we would probably lose some of the course offerings. If we kept 2 of the 3 together, then we wouldn't lose as much of the but we would still lose some,
So the 16 teachers that we have that are non-contract, are all of them certified in the area in which they're teaching?
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, there clearly are other options. We're presenting these two, because, you know, for time, these are two that we could consider, but there's certainly other options. We're gonna give you a recommendation. Know that we're giving you options, and we don't present options that we don't think are viable, but it would be disingenuous of us not to say, well, this is what we think as we've talked as a team. I'm not speaking for anybody else except for me and some of the people over here. Our recommendation would be to support East Shore and serve all three districts. We believe that will provide the most benefit for students and would keep the costs the lowest and would give all three districts, you know, a period of time for them to really get on their feet and then to figure out what they want to do.
I have
Yes.
a question. You were saying that they're paid differently, and so you've got 16 teachers. Is it a range of, like, some of them are part-time and some of them are full-time, or are they all full-time, or how is that?
So none of them are 40-hour-a-week full-time.
Okay.
So different ones do work different amount of hours based
Mhm.
on their load. And that's kind of, we give them different courses, and based on the amount of students that we can anticipate will come and the amount of work that we need them to put in to redo courses. And that's kind of the allocation of resources that Matt goes through every year. So some of them are working significantly less than others.
Mhm.
For those that are working the most that we allow, you know, it's probably around a half to 2/3 of what a full-time 40-hour
Okay.
employee. One of the great benefits that we have to recognize, though, is because of this push in May, our teachers are all, you know, if you ask them in May, they're working 80-hour weeks. They are up at 2 in the morning grading so the kids can graduate. If you talk to them in November, they're not working very many. So it kind of evens out throughout the year, and they're
Mhm.
great with that. But that is also a great benefit to us because we get that flexibility. Yes, well,
Go ahead.
So I was not able to make the calculation from your cost earlier, but is this like if we get the WPU if one of these districts got the WPU for a student and then that student took full-time at East Shore, would the WPU pay for that, or would they have to supplement?
so our current model is the school keeps the WPU. So if we continue to do it like this,
Yeah.
Central District sponsored East Shore and a student from the West District, they could get the WPU in the West District, go to East Shore and take the courses, and then East Shore would just charge the actual cost back to the school.
So is the actual cost going to be less or than?
The actual cost is
less
actually
than a
less.
full WPU?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's less.
Oh, I was gonna ask, when you update classes, are you talking about innovation? Are you talking about keeping up with state standards, or both? Or
All of the above. State standards, innovation, new methodology, just you know, every teacher I know that's in a traditional class, the greatest ones haven't laminated their lesson plans. They are constantly tweaking and trying to get better. That's exactly what our East Shore teachers do as well.
Blaine, just to clarify, these are pass-fail classes generally, right?
No, they're graded. There are a few that I think are pass-fail.
It's grade just on a grading scale. The pass-fail sometimes comes from the digital curriculum class that they might take in person. And not all students are required to take that, but that's the pass-fail class if they're taking it at their high school, where they have the class to go in and work on East Shore. But there actually is no failure in this. If you don't finish, it doesn't go on the transcript. It's either credit or no.
And then these also are the ones where, like, NCAA, we can't use these because it disqualifies athletes, correct?
We are not currently NCAA.
Okay.
Because NCAA wants some of that synchronous, and
Right.
we don't have that in, so that we do lose some students to other options like SCOP, because some of the SCOP providers are NCAA. All right.
SOEP.
We're going to talk about adult ed, and Lynn's going to talk about it.
Okay, so we've got till 9 tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But that will only be Julie and Stacy.
Okay.
Then I will listen to you for as long as you need.
All right. Well, adult ed is one of our programs that relies heavily on East Shore. And Kip here is our director of adult ed. He's been there for decades, and we appreciate what he's done there. Over at adult ed, we have 3 main focuses. One is to help students prepare for and earn their adult diploma. So they just continue wherever they were with traditional high school and go over there and finish up. We had 34 of those last year that graduated with an adult diploma. They also help prepare students for a GED if it looks like they don't want to stay till they're 50 years old, they just want to get their GED. So they help give them a pretest, help teach whatever they're deficient in, and we had 211 GEDs last year from adult ed. The third function over there is to help adults learn English. So Kip hires teachers, and he's got a program going at Orem Junior High School and one going at Frontier Middle School. And those Frontier Middle's mainly at night, Orem Junior goes all day long, and the citizens in that area just come and take English classes, and Kip's program pays for much of that. Some of that comes from Title I funding and other funding as well. So those are the main functions of adult ed. Because adult ed is so tied into East Shore, organizationally they share some staff, they use the same curriculum. We really think that whatever happens with East Shore probably ought to happen with adult ed. They probably ought to go hand in hand. Here's this bottom bullet. Here is their funding for this last year. So they get $600,000 from the state and $165,000 from the feds, and they get that on each year, and then they apply for another grant every 3 years. And it really depends on how well they did, whether or not they get that funding next year. And Kip's been running a great program and continue to get funded. Here's our recommendation, that whatever we do with, like I just said, East Shore, we do the same with adult ed, with one caveat, that if we keep East Shore and it serves all 3 districts, we want adult ed to serve all 3 districts, but the English language learning classes, we think that ought to be split off and let each district do that on their own. It doesn't make a lot of sense for one district to run an English class in another district when other funds are being used to help that.
Lynn, can you clarify how much Title I and grant money, you've talked about how that's used to enhance the adult ELL. Do you know how much money that is?
No, but Annalise might. Do you know,
Yeah, it's
Annalise?
close to 300,000.
Thank you.
Can you
So
repeat
I
the
should
question?
say.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What
will you
was the
repeat that?
question, Julie?
Yeah, it said that Title I and grant money is used to enhance the adult ELL classes, and I asked how much, and Annalise said it was around $300,000.
But only at the Orem location. We don't contribute to the Eagle Mountain location. I think that's out of yours a little bit.
So from Kip's budget, about $165,000 the Fed goes towards the adult English learning. And over at the Orem location, they even have a daycare for people, so parents can come, drop off their daycare, and go to class, pick up their kids. Anyway.
It's actually, it does it out there, it's a preschool. Up
Pardon?
here. It's a preschool, actually helps you.
Sorry, I used the wrong word.
They don't like me, so I say that sometimes.
Okay.
Is that adult ELL once a week? Or is it
It's
every day? What is it?
3
3 times
times.
a week?
And they have several different levels. Anyway, go ahead, Stacey.
Can we get the breakdown, not to now, like when you have a minute, of the 34 graduated and the 211 GEDs, can you break it down by area so we know what we potentially be
I'm
serving?
gonna ask Kip to do that. Kip, did you hear
Thank
that?
you for, if you will do that.
Can break down by district. Okay.
And do we know what the participation level is in those 2 locations at Frontier and Orem Junior?
As far as the English language,
Uh-huh.
it's huge, but I don't know the
About
numbers.
250 in Orem, about 200 in Eagle Mountain. And this is the second year they come out, and if they do what they did last year, they're gonna overtake our long-running forum program. We're trying to do things in North Fork and Denver.
And there was a waiting list out at Frontier, is there still?
No.
Okay, so you got them on, okay. So that's adult ed. Any other questions about adult ed before we move on? Okay, appreciate Kip doing this for so many years. Thank you. Okay, we're going to talk about Alpine Online. Alpine Online is one of our most versatile schools we have. They are a school. They do have a director. Gina Witt is here. She's the director. And they were formed originally to help our homeschool parents get curriculum and help with teaching their students homeschool. And they still do that, but they're much more than that. A lot of their students aren't just full-time homeschool. Some of them are part-time at their neighborhood school, whether that be elementary or junior high. And some of them come and go. I mean, you might have a student who needs to be out of school for health reasons. They're going to be out for several months. Well, that a lot of those students jump on Alpine Online and get help while they're out, and then come back. We also have, this year, we've had students go in for discipline reasons. So sometimes even a K through 8 student will be on long-term suspension, and Alpine Online has been helping with those students as well. So they're serving a lot of different roles, which we appreciate. Gina, as I pointed out, is the director of Alpine Online. She has 4.5 teachers and 1 secretary. And let's see what we got. I think we've already talked about some of this, but they do help students with IEPs. The homeschool, the neighborhood school does serve the IEP, but those students do get help in their other courses through Alpine Online. It's been hard to kind of keep track of their numbers because the homeschool, if they have an IEP, takes their full WPU, and if they're part-time, they take the full WPU. So that's been a little hard to keep track. So Gina has been, we're going to show you in just a moment. Actually, we'll go right now. Here's a snapshot of this last week, last Friday. This is the students that they had in Alpine Online. You'll notice the different categories. Ongoing, those are students that are there for at least half of the year. Temporary, those are students that are on behavior or long-term suspension. It looks like we have 1 in an enrolled process there. And then Gina has started a flex track just recently, trying to be much more flexible and letting students take either just 1 class if they want. Let's see if we've got a market out there for those students. The other students take at least 3 classes.
So our document is this updated from?
This was updated. The one you had on Friday was last week's numbers, and I updated it.
Yeah, look at the top of the one you have. It has a different date on there. I apologize.
That's fine.
We wanted to give you the most recent.
Close.
The table next to it though shows the breakdown of districts, and we do have a few that are out of district or are in like a private school or something like that that's in our district, but not in one of our schools. Did you have a question?
I have like 4. Are we?
Pick the easiest
Shocker,
one.
right? Are we still using the K-12 program to support Alpine Online?
The
So,
K.
do you want me to answer?
Yes.
The K-12 program is for our K-5 students. We use a different curriculum for 6A.
And if I remember correctly, it used to be with the K-12 platform that if you had a student who was even like, let's say they come in kind of mid-year, you still had to buy the full license for the full year. Is that still accurate?
K-12 does not offer a different option. So
Okay.
we buy the
So one of my concerns is just the cost associated with the program, because the expenditures are more than our brick and mortar schools. So, like for example, when we have 24 students that are out of district, my understanding is that we're subsidizing Alpine Online, and that we're essentially additionally subsidizing any students who are out of district or from non-district schools. That's okay.
I'll address that.
You have a good
So,
answer.
I think one of the questions that has been so difficult is for us to get an actual cost of what it's costing us in Alpine Online. We can get the cost of what we're paying the teachers and what the curriculum costs us, but to divide it by the number of students is difficult because that counting of number of students has not been super clean because we have for years done it a certain way. Like when a student is on a special ed, they stay enrolled at their home school 100%. If they're dual enrolled with Alpine Online, but they get 0% enrollment. I'll be completely honest, this is Lynn and I's first year working with Alpine Online. It's Gina's first year working with Alpine Online.
As the director.
As the director, we need to figure out how that actually needs to work and should work. It hasn't been, it's all going to the district, so it hasn't been as big of an issue, but it's a really big issue for us right now. So we've already started to have conversations like with Paul Lewis and Data Services, who does our reporting to the state, with SPED to say is this the way we should be counting that, so that we can get this cleaned up so that in the future we're gonna have a better count. Because I don't believe that if we're counting the students correctly, that we're gonna see that this is significantly more. I think we'll actually see that it's costing less. But we have to do those numbers. So I'm standing here telling you, this is one that we still have to get our heads wrapped around a little bit because it's a very complex.
If I could add to that, this year, K12.com has changed their model so that all materials are available online. They've also changed the way that we pay for courses. It used to be one student, have as many courses as you want. So you can imagine they would charge us a maximum amount for kids taking 3 or 5 or 6 classes. Now we pay by the class. We offer hardbound materials to kids, but not all of them take us up on that. And so we're really picky about who gets what and what they need. So I think after this year, everybody will see a significant reduction in costs simply because K-12 has changed the model of how they offer that to us. And that's been one of the reasons we wanted to stay, because we believe in their curriculum, knowing that it's been expensive, but we are trying to mitigate costs a little bit that way.
I totally appreciate that. I'm just concerned about like the ADM numbers that I'm seeing. I still think it's significantly higher than what we're encountering in our brick and mortar. And I understand that like we have to work with like the limitations, which is why I kind of confirmed that like K-12 was still doing the full like year model piece. So I totally get what you're saying, but I do have significant concerns about the cost associated with it based on our ADM.
So do we.
They are serving about 52 to 55 students each, though. When you factor the WP in for that, I mean,
Per student, per year.
right.
Say that again.
Each teacher's got about 52 to 55 students. And so if all the WPU came to Alpine Online, I think we'd be actually making money.
Well, so we're gonna give you a couple options, but then we're gonna put an asterisk on our recommendation for this one. Just because there's still some unknown here and we recognize there's unknown. So one of the options here is one of the districts would pick it up and we'd continue to serve. By doing that, we'd hope to continue to serve about the same number of kids or more kids. We could keep a robust faculty of, I went and spent some time with this faculty yesterday. They were meeting during our professional development day, and the 5 teachers plus Gina, that was a powerful collaboration experience. So there is some value to keeping that together. An option 2 would be each district could develop their own program. This is purchased curriculum. You could do that. There could be a, you would have much smaller schools where you'd have 1 or 2 teachers instead of 4 or 5 teachers in each district. And there would probably, you would lose some duplication of services. So our recommendation is we want to look at the feasibility of keeping that together. But we recognize, and you can see the needs at the bottom, we need added clarity for the enrollment, how that works for SPED students, for part-time students, how we're counting all that, so that we can accurately figure out how that might work across districts and how we would accurately show the enrollment fairly to the homeschool in a different district and Alpine Online, and make sure that that model works. without significant cost. So this is one where, this is our recommendation, but it has a little bit of an asterisk there, because we know we have more work that needs to go into this, and we just haven't been able to get all those answers. Yes?
Have we looked at how many students that reside within Alpine School District that are actually attending Utah Online, which is Washington District's online school? Do we know?
So we-
We're losing students.
We
to
have that for the
program?
SOEP, which is 6th grade and up, but I don't have any information below 6th grade on.
I'm just curious, because their numbers are super high in comparison, and their district is relatively small in comparison. So I was wondering if we were duplicating services.
It's a great question.
The way we can get that is if Washington District sends us a bill saying these are your students enrolled with us, we need the property tax, they'll send the addresses and we'll verify them, but that's the way we bill it.
Have they sent us a bill?
I don't know, we do that between districts on everything, but I haven't seen one recently from Washington.
That's called Utah Online?
All right, I'm gonna let Lynn talk quickly about Explore.
So Explore is new this year, and it's meant to be temporary for students. So students who are on long-term suspension or through the student services, or if the school just needs a extended timeout with the students so that they can get some services lined up, we serve them at Explore. They use East Shore curriculum. The teachers get online with them, have appointments with them almost daily with these kids, trying to work their way through the curriculum. Then on Wednesday afternoons they come in and meet. It is part of the old Focus Center. The discipline part of the old Focus Center is Explore. We have 2 teachers there plus a half-time special ed teacher to help with those students. We are recommending that when the district splits that we don't continue with Explore. That because it's so tied to student services, that it wouldn't seem very wise to have students temporarily coming across district lines to get counseling in one district and then go back. I think, we think that those districts all need to come up with their own option to help students who are on long-term suspension. Any questions about Explore? Okay.
Okay. So we're going to now transition. We talked about online, and there's a lot of information, and I apologize. As we've done this, we've tried to pare it down, and every time people say, but I need this information. So we've just tried to put it in and be efficient. But we're excited to talk to you a little bit about alternative and youth and care schools. Lynn talked about online is often built for flexibility, where we can serve kids depending on their needs. They can do work wherever they are, from home, in the middle of the night. They can work around. We have students doing online that are preparing for the Olympics or doing all sorts of, have different needs. Our alternative in youth and care is kind of the other end of the spectrum, where these students often need more support, they need more structure, they need more adult intervention, they need face-to-face help. And so that's, we're talking about Polaris and Summit. We create those specifically because there are students that need those kind of services that we just aren't able to offer in our traditional school settings. Online options are usually built for flexibility, talked about that, but our alternative are more for support. We do this through lower staff to student ratios. These schools don't offer all the course offerings a traditional high school does. They don't have the extracurricular activities and some of those other options, but they do have that adult to student connection, and that is the secret sauce that makes it all work with these schools. But it is expensive, and we recognize that these schools are a significant investment. We look at it as we're investing in their lives now to help them to have a great experience, to graduate, and that's going to pay off greatly for society as a whole. We would rather invest a little bit more money now to help them so that they can have full and productive lives and not have all of the problems that might come with failure at this level. We often hear in alternative schools from our students, they didn't feel like they belonged, and they're at Polaris and Summit, and now they feel like they belong. So it's a great way to explain those schools. I'm going to let Lynn talk a little bit. He's been involved with alternative schools for his whole career, so we give him just.
Thank you. It says thank you, and that's sincere. I started with alternative schools over 30 years ago. My first job in Alpine District was to teach at Summit in an isolated class. I was the teacher, and some of those courses I was very well prepared to teach, and others I was just one day ahead of those students. So as I look at what Summit and Polaris are doing now, and I compare that with what I was providing then, I was giving them, it was a disservice to those students to be isolated like I was. But the thank you part comes into the board through the years, and administration continued to improve our facilities, continued to say what's best for these kids, and we kept consolidating until we had Summit High School. And later on we had Polaris High School to serve students better. They have an incredible experience at these schools. I'm in them almost daily. Okay, I don't go in on Saturdays, but the other days I'm there, and I see dedicated teachers, and I see students. It was interesting, before coming to get this experience, I was at Orem High School, and my love for alternative world is throughout. I mean, 17 years of my career have been in alternative schools. So at Orem, I tried to do what I could for those kids, and then I came to this job, and I saw students at Polaris and Summit that I knew at Orem High, and they weren't going to graduate at Orem High, and I've seen them graduate at Polaris High School and Summit High School. You know, Mike Mattos, you all have heard of him, educational guru. He goes on and on about all students need an education, and a lot of those students get that in alternative schools. We as a district could not claim that we serve all students if we forgot about our alternative schools. I remember just a few years ago when I was over at Summit as the principal, there was a little daycare kid, a toddler. We had a lot of them, but this one, now I see at Polaris every day. So I saw him when he was a 1 or 2 year old toddling around. His mom was a Summit student. Lots of difficulties. Now he just needs a little bit more help in math. He's on track to graduate. He'll graduate on time. And that's a product of alternative schools, getting kids ready to go. His mom believes in education enough to get her son to school, and he's gonna succeed. Blaine mentioned that these schools are a little bit more expensive than the other schools. That's absolutely true. The other day, though, I spent about 5 minutes on Google and just typed in cost of high school dropouts. Lots of studies came up. The conservative figure is $250,000 per dropout. Now, other studies had that much higher, but we're going to be asking for more money than other schools are asking for, but we still think it's an investment in our students, that they're productive and can help in society. So thank you for the support so far in alternative world. Yes, Mark.
No, I just wanted to chime in. Every time I attend a graduation, I am inspired, and I get the distinct impression that for most of these students, this is their last chance. You know what I mean? If we don't catch them, they are going into a life of crime. A lot of them, their families are in drugs, and it's like it's a rescue operation that you can't underestimate the impact it has on the students' lives.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you all for coming to graduations. Thank you for coming to the schools during associates or the Teen Center open house, coming and supporting. I appreciate you being invested in those schools. I told you I've been involved with alternative schools 17 years, so a lot of my career I have not been. There's been 16 years I haven't been in alternative schools. I still go. I've been to every one of them except for one of their graduations, because it reminded me every year why I'm an educator. Whether I was in that school or not, I went to their graduation and I came away thinking I can do better, I can make a bigger difference than I am now. Anyway, it's something we need to invest in. Alternative schools, just a snapshot of some of them around us. We are surrounded by districts with alternative schools because it's important. A few years ago, as you all know, Jordan District split. And so as we are contemplating splitting, I know a lot of our thoughts go to Jordan District and what was their experience. For several years, the new district, Canyons, did not have an alternative school. But those students continued to go to Valley High School in Jordan until Canyons developed an alternative school in 2015. We believe that that could happen here too, that students can cross district lines to continue to get service.
Okay, so how might that happen? We're going to give some more facts and figures and try to answer questions. Just to give you an idea of enrollment, so this top one is all the students last year. This is total number of students served. We know that students come and go a little bit, especially from at Summit. That's a much more transient school, and so we never at any time had 496 students in those schools. To give you an idea, this was a snapshot enrollment right at the beginning of the term after Christmas break. So
is
in
the
January.
acronym YIC Youth in Court? Is that what
Youth
that
in
is?
Custody. Youth in
Care.
It's youth in care. It used to be
Okay.
youth in custody, but it's
Custody,
now
okay.
youth in care. That's a great question. Sorry for not.
That's all right.
So one of the great things, Summit is largely funded, and we'll talk about this, but is largely funded through a grant from the state to take care of our youth in care students. Students that are in state custody, in foster care, or in group homes. The state allows us to educate other students that aren't youth in care along with those students because it's a benefit to our youth in care. They benefit from having other students at the school because that population is a little more stable. They don't come and go as fast. If you've ever been to Summit, you just know the culture there of caring, and these other non-youth in care students that go to Summit are really who carry that culture. So it's a benefit, and the state is aware of this and knows and are great as long as it continues to be a win-win. Yes?
So I remember a couple years ago, they said that the state does pay, but it's like we subsidize more as a district than what they were giving. Is that true?
So the state pays for us to educate the youth in custody kids. At any given time, well, I'll go to this one and then I'll come back. We have about 100 students at Summit. That's kind of been the average. About half of them, maybe a little less than half, are youth in custody. Around half are non-youth in custody. About 85% of the funding for Summit comes from the state through the youth in care. So really, that youth in care grant is subsidizing us educating the non-youth in care. So we're actually getting a great deal for that.
Thank you.
Board Member Lincoln had a question.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
When I look at your 23-24 school year and then the snapshot in January 25, it's significantly lower. Is that a typical trend that those schools will grow between January and the end of the year, or is this year an anomaly?
So this one is the total students served throughout the year. So 322 different students came through Polaris at any given time during the year, but at any single time it's around 200. In January there was about 200. We anticipate we would serve over 300 kids, but about 200 at any given time because we're getting new kids throughout the year and we graduate. Just last week we had 10 students graduate from Polaris where they graduated early. And so we celebrate them and had a graduation ceremony, but now we have 10 students less. Then we added new students today. So we have a number.
You anticipate the end of the 24-25, those numbers will look like the 23-24?
Yeah, they'll probably be, we're down just a little bit this year, so it'll be similar, but maybe not quite the same. So, just two ways to look at it, to kind of give you an idea. We tried to give you an idea by areas as well, central, south, and west.
So the snapshot of January 2025, if I was to look at a snapshot of January 2024, they would be
Fairly similar.
Yeah, and if I could just say one thing, I think we're coming from referral schools, and one of the reasons we're requesting this is the sophomores this year, that are being referred, will finish, and I think there is hesitation to send students to a school that they won't graduate from. So clarity does matter to continue enrollment or not for schools, because they do the referring, and they want, you know, families have questions about what this looks like in the next few years for student funding.
So I'm sorry, can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't
are
know.
you, are you saying that like parents, because they know the districts are splitting, may
Yes.
not refer their kids?
They're concerned, we have parents requesting, but they want clarity, right? They don't wanna move a kid at risk and then move another kid at risk. Cause where would they go? Leave, you know, their homeschool, come here for 2 years, and then go back to their homeschool for their last year. That feels confusing. So that clarity, unclarity is confusing, yeah.
So, and students that are sophomores this year
Yes.
would finish,
Yes, they will
so they
finish.
wouldn't have that unclarity, or
Yes.
that unclarity is
Depends on what the
being.
board does with the program between now and then. I think that's why there's some uncertainty as well. It's not just when the new districts start, it's what is the continuity of that program over the next couple of years.
And we know we won't have answers until new boards, but part of what we would ask is that, I know there's gonna be a lot on new boards' plates right off the bat, but this will be a significant decision that will impact our students, and we'll need to have plans for them to transition in or transition out, depending on how this looks. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a little data on the enrollment at Polaris. So for FY24, the October 1 count was like at 200. And then the average daily membership, when you do that and then divide by 180, it was 209. But the cumulative count was 318. So there's that many, but on average it stays about that.
Yep. I broke it down by high school at Polaris. We don't have this number yet for summer. We can work on getting that. But you can see there are different schools that seem to identify students that are good fits for Polaris more than others. But we do have participation from all of our schools, and all of our schools are sending students. This was not in the previous slide deck I shared with you. This was a late addition.
This is surprising to me.
Yes.
Is that, so there's a couple different things when I look at this data point that I wonder. One, does like the principal's previous placement have an impact? For instance, Dr. Smith out at Westlake used to be over at Polaris, so is it because he's more aware of those resources? And then the other question I wonder is, like Westlake looks like it's leading out, not completely leading out, but it's towards, no it is, towards the high end. But then if I also compare Westlake's student count to say that of Timpanogos or Mountain, or even like Mountain View, it's almost double.
Right. So if you looked at, compared to their student count, I don't think Westlake and Cedar Valley are much different than the norm. A couple that would stand out, Mountain View and Pleasant Grove. I think those have traditionally been schools. I don't think it necessarily ties back to a single person or principal at those schools. I think there are cultures that build up often within counseling departments where they have seen success, and they maybe just believe in that a little bit more, or identify kids a little bit different. Hannah is taking calls from our schools. Do you have anything to add as far as why some schools might?
You know, I think in Alpine we traditionally move around. I've been out west, I've been at Frontier, I've been at Lehigh, I've been at Summit, I've been at Polaris. And I do think we talk about the multi-tiered systems of support, And it is true when you get a new counselor or a different admin who know how to do the tiered systems, right? We know 3 to 5% will show up in tier 3. And it's, can we identify those students? And I've been at schools that don't identify tier 3 before tier 3 doesn't exist in a school anymore, right? They're dropouts because they haven't been able to catch them in time to give them the supports. And so I have seen, even in the last 2 years that I've been at Polaris, trends of schools where you have new administrators, new counselors who know how to, when to catch a student, when to refer them to get them to that spot. And you do have people who have had touches of success and recognize that a program can serve. And when I'm at Lehigh, it was easier for me to identify students who would be successful because I had worked with them. And so I could say, hey, you know, I see kids differently because I had been in an alternative setting before.
One thing I would also add is we have worried that, okay, maybe some schools know better than others, or we just aren't getting the information out. And so our team has said, what can we do to try to make sure that everybody has that information? So, like, for one thing we did last summer, we sponsored during the summer 2 different occasions so that administrators from across the district could come and spend a half a day. They toured Summit and Polaris. We taught them about each one of our programs. We gave them information. We've created a whole website with information about all of our programs to try to just help make sure that it's a level playing field and that everybody has an equal opportunity to use these programs. And because we've worried that maybe it's word of mouth or something, and so we've tried to really take on that challenge of making sure that everybody knows about our programs equally.
You're going to talk about their graduation rates.
Graduation rate, Polaris is knocking it out of the park. They 85% last year. Is that correct, Hannah?
Yep.
So where in just 3 or 4 years ago was down in the 60% range, and so this started before Hannah came, but Hannah has continued that onward trend, and we just are doing great things getting students prepared. I think we have over 1,100 graduates that have come through Polaris, or is it even higher than that?
Yeah, Polaris has existed for about 13 years, and I think it's just over 1,100 total graduates.
And they're you're rolling off ATSI, right?
CSI, yeah.
CSI.
Yeah.
You're coming off, right?
I
probably should.
Yes, this next year they should release us when we graduate this year in October when the count was finalized. We should be released. Yeah.
Awesome. And then I have another question. So this is like 3 years ago, my brain, so you can just tell me. So it used to be that like every school had X amount of spots.
Yes.
These numbers are clearly more than what the spots were. So is it just you have expanded your capacity of teachers and what they can handle, and so now you're taking everyone, or there's still a waiting list of like these kids could really use it? Like, how do you?
So in general, we accept all students. Even within our rubric, we've worked really well with the schools. I have said no to 0 students this year wanting to come, even those who don't quite fit in the rubric, because if we can contain everyone in the rubric, then we have some room to have some grace. The only thing we have ever restricted is special ed spots, because we only have 1 special ed teacher. And so we have that kind of ratio. So Cedar Valley, Westlake, Westlake for sure gets the most students, down to, I think, Orem gets 2 special ed students. Once again, I've said no to 0 students this year. So some students, because not every school has filled all their spots. So I tell admin, just call me so I can look at my total and then see, yes, we can come because these ones are gonna graduate. So we try to keep it fair, but once again, when people call and ask, we've been able to accommodate for that. And not overload, the ratio of special ed to gen ed.
I know Dan covers a different set of kids, and talk about your graduation rate and just
our graduation rate has consistently trended upward. It's a little trickier in that we get so many students that leave or come to us in March or April of their senior year with 4 credits. But we take them all because they are YSCME. So it's a little bit more challenging, but I like to look at our numbers more than even our percentage, because each year we're graduating average 35 students each year. Those are 100% students that wouldn't have graduated without the program.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have to provide some testimonials. I have talked to so many students that had never passed a class before because they could not sustain more than like 1 week of attendance before they would have something else going on in their life. And so the fact that you can kind of do one class for a week and get a credit, all of a sudden they're successful, and then they're successful in graduating and in life. And I just feel like this is so critical for students, the students that have that trouble sustaining attendance. There's no way they could ever succeed in a normal high school
Yeah,
district.
those mini-term setup really does help this population of students quite a bit. So,
Sorry, I don't want to toot your horn, but
we are grateful, and like Lynn said, we're so grateful for the support. But we have a hard, decision on how we can continue to have these services for all the great students that currently are in Alpine, and we'll be in 3 great new districts. Here's a little bit of reality. We talked about it. Summit gets most of their funding from the state YIC grant, even though about half of their students are not YIC. Polaris gets very little specialized funding, and we've gotten a little bit of teen center money. We've gotten some CSI money, the normal things like trust lands and TSSA and SPED and CTE. So one of them is a really great deal for our non-YIC kids, and another one costs quite a bit. We've got 4 options.
The last line you said that they had worked at cost cutting.
We have worked. So Polaris has, there's been so much change in Polaris. We had Polaris, and then we had Polaris West and Polaris, and then we put them back together, then we moved locations, and through all that over the last several years, we've asked Hannah and Corey before that to say, how can we try to bring down the cost per student? And they have cut some teaching positions. We cut an administrative position, cut counseling positions, and so we are trying to be as lean as possible at Polaris because we are aware of the cost, for sure.
Okay, can I ask a side question, and we can maybe talk about this later, but with the reduction in admin, and I know we're looking for an increase in SRO, but have you felt like your load has gotten, like, is it sustainable without that other admin piece? And if you want to talk about it later, just tell me, we'll talk about it later.
We can talk about it later.
Okay.
So we have some options, and we're aware of the time, so I'm going to try to go fast. I'm going to put a bunch of things, but please know I've tried to do some calculations to just show a general idea. I am not Jason, and I don't want to be Jason. He is great at this. He is so awesome at this, and he would. But I did sit down with Laura Lee and with B and try to check some of my numbers to make sure my thinking was at least right. And so I have some confidence that we're in the ballpark, but probably not exact when it comes to kind of what this would cost for different options. So we're going to talk about option 1, maintaining Summit and Polaris as separate entities to serve all 3 districts. So what we would envision is Central District, that's where it resides currently, would run Summit and Polaris, but serve students from the other districts based on a shared service agreement. Again, we would probably ask until a commitment till 2030. My understanding is that the lease on the building that they're currently in goes until 2030. So that will necessarily be a pivot point where some decisions will have to be made by Central District and by all the districts. And so we think it would be great to try to make some decisions up until that time. We believe that if we can keep the students coming, the operational costs will remain fairly consistent. We can continue to run these programs largely like they are, but continuing to try to improve them like we have. Summit would serve all the youth and care students from all 3 districts, regardless of numbers. So if a student's youth and care and they come to Summit, they're in. Central District could continue to provide busing. We have talked, we can, even if Central District takes a bus route to another district and picks up students and brings them, that can be reimbursable from the state. So a large portion of that cost could be reimbursed have to make sure that all of those routes have 10 students on them, so that those can remain reimbursable. There would be a little additional cost, and we could add a little bit into central, into that calculation. But I have not done that in the calculations you see, so. But where you're talking, 15 cents a mile or 18 cents a mile, that's not gonna add up to huge amounts of money. So here's a possible funding agreement. One way you could do it is you could just say, Polaris and Summit cost this much, and we're gonna subtract out all the specialized money we get, and then say, well, Central District has 41% of the kids, so they're gonna take 41% of the cost, and they get 41% of the slots. They get 41% of the spaces. As you've heard us talk, those numbers fluctuate, so we're a little hesitant to say we want to have slots, because there are certain times where there would be more Central kids than we have slots for, and 2 months later there might be room in Central but not in the South. So we're a little hesitant on the slots, so we've come up with a potential other way that you could do this. You could take the per pupil cost, so calculate the per pupil cost, subtract out the specialized funding. That's money that comes with the student or is for a specialized purpose. So that's your youth and care money, that's your CSI money, it's your SPED money that comes with the student, it's your trust lands and TSSA that we're given per student. And then you would subtract out the WPU, and that would be what we would charge for a student that is enrolled for all 180 days. If you have a student enrolled less, we'd use that percentage. So there'd have to be some bookkeeping here to make this happen. So those specialized funding sources, we went through line by line on the budgets for Summit Polaris and subtracted out youth and custody money, SPED money, CT money, trust funds money, TSSA money, CSI money, and Teen Center money. So we took that out. So when you see where we say this is the specialized funding, that's what it is it's those sources. So here's, if we were doing this a year ago, so if this was FY24, we just took, so FY27 or 28's numbers would be different, but this would be the rationale or how you could do it, the methodology. Per pupil, we would use ADM and add the average facility cost, which is how they do it now. Using ADM and the average facility cost, Summit costs about $33,000 per pupil. Polaris costs about $30,000 per pupil. The specialized funding sources, by the way, I've linked to a spreadsheet that has a whole bunch of stuff on there, and I'm happy to sit down with you at any time and go through that if you like spreadsheets. So of the 33,000 plus at Summit, 28,594 comes from YIC, SPED, CTE for the non-YIC students. So if you say the YIC students are paid 100%, the non-YIC students, 28,000 of their 33,000 comes from those specialized sources. At Polaris, of their 30,000, 3,500 comes per pupil. So a much smaller number. The WPU, 44.95. That's actually this year's. I made a mistake there. I didn't go back and recalculate, but last year would have been like 44.70, so it's a $25 difference. So here's what it would look like. If, so say Central's running that for every non-YIC student at Summit, you take the 33,000, you subtract out 28,000, you subtract out the WPU. Other districts would actually reimburse only $410 for every student that goes to Summit that's a non-YIC student. Polaris, on the other hand, 30,000 per pupil. You take out the specialized funding of 3,504, the WPU of 44.95, and so the other district would have to reimburse Central 22,149 for every student that comes. So if you went back and said, well, what would that look like in 23-24? So taking my best estimate of the average daily membership, the South would have paid the Central, if this was in place last year, about $1.6 million. And the West would have paid the Central about 1.3. The Central's contribution would be about 1.5. The rest of the costs in addition to those would all be those specialized funding sources, the WPMU money, and the other sources of funding.
Blaine, on the Summit one, so if that's based on the grant, does that mean if you had more students then that number would go up, right, because it's a flat number?
So that grant, they're given money for next year based on about how many students they've had in the past year, and our numbers at Summit have been fairly consistent over the last several years because we have several youth homes in our area, and so that those youth homes have so many people in them, and so that number of YIC students is not very widely, so we kind of know how much we're going to get. That's been a fairly consistent number. Is that correct, Dan?
That's how they fund us per bed, not, so it's really consistent because we know how many beds are each.
Okay, option 2. We're going to go fast. This would be one where we could conceivably take Polaris and Summit and combine them into one school. Let's say instead of 2 separate schools, we're going to have one school, serves all the non-YIC kids that we currently are serving in Summit, and the YIC kids, and the kids in Polaris. It would be a much bigger school. We would have the same kind of agreement where all 3 districts participate. We could save a little bit of money because there would be some overhead costs that we could consolidate. Some of the teaching positions we have are so that we can have enough courses to offer, and so we have 3 math teachers at that school and 3 at that school. If we combine them, we might need 5 instead of 6. Some of those kind of situations. We would still do the busing. We would still try to have daycare, teen center, and so forth. We would use a similar formula. We could probably eliminate 8 to 10 positions, we believe, out of the total of those 2 schools. One thing that needs to be said here is that it's not as easy to just combine 2 schools as it sounds like. I mean, Summit and Polaris are fantastic places, but they have unique cultures and they have unique programs and they run differently. Summit gets new kids every day and students leave every day. Polaris gets kids at the quarter breaks and they leave at graduation time, and that just changes the way that schools run. So we would lose, if we combined, we would lose some of the services, but we could save a little bit of money, and we wanted to give you all the options. So based on that, the combined school cost would be about $17,000 instead of some kids at $410 and some kids at $22. Every kid would be about $17,000. Subtract the $44.95 would be about $12,000 per student that would come to that school. So just to go ahead, the cost for this last year would be those numbers. So in each of those cases, it's about $400,000 less. So the question would be, is that amount of money worth combining those schools, and especially combining them only for probably 3 years, because in 2030 there's probably going to be some future decisions made. And so there's a lot of upheaval to close a school, combine them, reculture them, potentially rename them, just to then have another big decision point in 3 years. But that's an option that could be considered.
Can I say, sorry, I swore I wasn't gonna say. But a parent did bring this up, and just one thing, there is cultural impact combining youth and care with alternative. Parents do have opinions about a student who is anxious, depressed, going to a school with youth and care. Now, we can kind of parse, look at the complete picture, but that is a concern for parents, to just merge them together.
We've got 2 minutes and 2 options, and they're going to go fast. So option 3 would be, there would be a scenario where you could say, we'll keep Summit to serve the youth and care students across all 3 districts. They largely are funded from the state, and each district could then take their alternative students and create their own programs. Option 4 would be that everybody just does their own thing. They take all their youth and care students and all their alternative, and they create all new programs for each. I think one of the questions you'd have to ask is that cost of 1.6 or 1.3 million a year, sufficient to go on your own as a new district. I think this is something new boards will have to wrestle with and say, could we create a quality program for our students using that amount of money? So those are all the options. I'm going to give our recommendation, and again, just a reminder, this is my recommendation. So I've talked to Lynn. I think he'd say his recommendation and our team. I don't want to speak for everybody in the district or everyone at the table, but this is ours, and ours would be option one. We believe that it's very viable to keep them together. We also believe that there is some benefit to having that stability through the reconfiguration, for our communities to know that these services are in place, and within 3 years, then new districts can decide what they're going to do. But that would help us in, and we can plan for what's going to happen after 2030. That will help us not have a lag and to have graduations that should have happened that won't, and all of those kind of things. It will also help us to avoid a school closure, and I think will help us to signal to our communities that we are continuing to take care of all of our students. So that would be our recommendation and belief. But we've given you others because we want to give you all the viable options. Okay. It's a lot to give you. Thank you for your attention. And, we're happy to talk if you have any other questions.
Any questions from the board? Okay. A lot of information. I appreciate you breaking the complexity down of that, the nature that these are schools actually within the central district, which has some ramifications as well. Absolutely. Boards are aware of that and some of the challenges associated with that. So lots of process through. So thank you very much.
Okay, so we're on break until board meeting at 6. Thank you, everybody.
to our school board meeting this evening. We're going to call the meeting to order. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Scott Sumner, and then our inspirational thought will be given by Julie Price.
As I was given this assignment, I thought a little bit about what I should say, and I landed on this. Why did teachers, administrators, district personnel, board members, classified employees choose to work with students in education? Why do we pour our hearts into classrooms, into lesson plans, into sometimes the challenging work of guiding and inspiring young minds? The answer lies in the profound truth of the late Rita Pearson's words. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be. Education is not merely about imparting knowledge, it's about building champions. It's about recognizing the inherent potential within each student and fostering it with unwavering belief. We educate to forge connections that illuminate pathways to success. We educate to instill the confidence needed to overcome obstacles. We educate to empower individuals to discover and unleash their unique brilliance. The why of education is to create a world where every child, regardless of their circumstance, has the opportunity to thrive, to contribute, and to become the best version of themselves, championed by those who believe in them wholeheartedly.
Thank you so much for that. Next up, we are going to do some recognitions. First up, Board Member Peterson.
All right, we invite Hallie and Principal Jenny Moore to come forward. Yeah, you can stand right there. Hallie Rowan, a second grade student at Windsor Elementary, was one of 8 Utah students selected to win a $2,000 college savings scholarship in the 2024 Make Your Mark Bookmark Contest. That's amazing. The contest, sponsored by My 529 and the Utah Board of Higher Education, invited students throughout the state to create an original bookmark design. Good job. Congratulations.
We would like to now invite Matt and his principal, Matthew Woolley, and his principal. Is Julie here? I didn't see Julie. Or Carrie. Sorry, Carrie. I see Julie. I see Carrie. Oh, Matt, we're so glad you're here tonight. The State Board of Education recently announced that Matthew Woolley, a science teacher at Mountain Ridge Junior High, has been selected as a finalist for the Presidential Awards of Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. This is the highest honor bestowed by the United States government specifically for K through 12 science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and/or computer science teaching. Finalists serve as models for their colleagues, inspiration to their communities, and leaders in the improvement of STEM education. Matt, congratulations and way to represent.
Alpine School District is thankful for so many teachers and staff members who excel in making a difference for students, parents, colleagues, and others. Tonight, we would like to recognize nominees who have been selected to receive the Alpine School District RISE Award, which stands for Remarkable, Inspiring, Selfless, Encouraging. Board Member Beeson.
We'd like to invite up Mike Jones, who's a teacher at Timberline Middle School. And Mike, you are here. We're so glad you're here tonight. And also Julie Price, his principal. Mike has been nominated, Mr. Jones has been nominated by Courtney Rasband. Courtney wrote, Mr. Jones has been encouraging in the RISE acronym. In December, while teachers had so many responsibilities with the end of the term, Mr. Jones took the time to write an encouraging email about our daughter. He addressed it to me, my husband, and even copied the school administration. Mr. Jones had observed specific positive qualities in our daughter and wanted to make sure that they were recognized. He went above and beyond to encourage her to continue working on these great qualities and to make us aware of what he saw in her. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for exemplifying the encouraging part of RISE.
Sorry, I think I started a thing. Okay, next, we're very excited to welcome up Mrs. Jorgensen. Yay! And then, I'm not sure, is Lacey here by chance? No, do you see, is Lacey here? No? Okay. Oh, I didn't even see you there. Okay, yep, please come forward. The person who nominated you. Okay, we've got it together now. We're all ready. Lacey wrote, Mrs. Jorgensen is such an amazing teacher. She makes learning a fun, engaging experience every day for the students, going over and beyond to make it a fun learning experience. I've loved having my daughter in her class and always hearing the exciting stories of what they are learning in class. My daughter has never wanted to read more and has grown this year because of Mrs. Jorgensen. She loves her students, and we appreciate her very much for all of her hard work. Congratulations, Mrs. Jorgensen.
Next, we'd like to invite Natasha Tracy to come forward with Principal Lori Belidi from Vineyard Elementary. Natasha is a teacher who was nominated by Megan Rodriguez, an employee at Vineyard.
Megan wrote, Natasha goes above and beyond to create a loving and supportive environment for her students, making each one feel valued and capable. Her dedication is unwavering. She works tirelessly, overcoming challenges with perseverance and grace. She is deeply invested in the success of all her students, consistently finding ways to help them grow academically and personally. Natasha is an amazing asset to Vineyard Elementary and her fifth grade team.
Next, we'd like to invite Mrs. McLaren and Principal Bakar from Frontier to come forward. So Mrs. McLaren was nominated by Rylan Levy, who's a student. Rylan wrote, Mary McLaren will always have a special place in my heart. I came to her classroom as a shy little 7th grader who didn't understand ASL or its impact on the world and me. I developed a love and passion for the language through her. Many of the concepts she taught me have stuck with me. I love the laughable moments and the memories they've been given. I learned about different stories, how to interpret songs, and how to sword fight with pool noodle swords. She helped me in so many ways. She truly is a fantastic person and teacher. Thank you, Mrs. McLaren. Thank you for those that have come tonight to be recognized, and for family and friends. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here this evening. We also wanted to congratulate Lone Peak High School, the 2024-2025 6A Girls State Basketball Champions. This is their 4th consecutive year in winning. Award certificates have been sent to the school and will be given to the student athletes during their own recognition ceremony. So let's just give a hand to the Lone Peak girls basketball team. Okay, so we now have up to 30 minutes set aside for public comment. This opportunity is allocated for patrons living within the Alpine School District boundary. A sign-up sheet was available prior to this meeting, allowing up to 10 patrons the opportunity to speak. Those living outside of Alpine School District and those who were unable to sign up before all slots were full can submit written comments at alpineschools.org/schoolboard. Scanning the QR code in the lobby will also direct you to that form. As you are called up, please introduce yourself by stating your name. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak. While the board does not engage in a discussion during the public comment period, they may arrange for a staff member to communicate with you later. Personnel issues are not appropriate discussion items for an open meeting environment. If you have a personnel concern, please contact a member of administration or put your concerns in writing and address it to the Board of Education. So we have Molly Barrington, who is signed up to give public comment this evening. So Molly.
Hello, I'm Molly Barrington, and I live in Lehigh. And I have no concerns at the moment. I just wanted to thank you guys. I know that since November has not been an easy time for you guys. And I know that it increased your workload by at least double. And I just wanted, I appreciate you guys so much in how much you care for our kids and for what a good example you set and for how hard you're willing to work to make sure things go well. Even if it's not your particular preference, you always put in 100%, and I truly, truly appreciate that. And I appreciate especially the administration who have taken suggestions to heart and really, really, truly care for our kids. And I just wanted to thank you for that, and thanks for letting us hang out with you on Tuesdays.
Thank you, Molly. Okay. You want me to start? Yeah, that's me still, right? Okay. We need to approve the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Peterson and a second by Board Member Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next, the claims. Dr. Farnsworth. I was going to say Dr. Superintendent, and that wasn't right, and so I had to pause.
Thank you, President King. So, you have received the routine business for this month, this board meeting, and I recommend you accept the routine business.
Are we doing claims first?
Yeah, let's do claims
Okay,
first.
great.
You've received the claims. I recommend you accept the claims.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the claims.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Beeson and a second by Board Member Clement. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Farnsworth.
Yes, the routine business, you have received that as well, and I recommend you accept the routine business.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the routine business.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Peterson. Any discussion?
May I just mention that we are approving the renewal of our business administrator's contract, and we just really are super appreciative of Jason Sundberg and all that he does, he and his team. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Wilson, a second by Board Member Peterson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay, if we can move on to the action items, we have two, both addressing calendars. We invite Dr. Joel Perkins to come forward, his Chief of Staff, who has overseen the calendar committees. And we recommend that you approve the 26-27 school calendar. And then we'll proceed to that one, and then we will address the recommendation for future calendar adoptions.
You have in front of you the 26-27 draft. It's the single calendar like this. The only changes that have been made since our last discussion was the question about minimal days. We met with the committee. The committee was very supportive of placing those, so you can see that those are designated on December 18th and on May 28th, and that's that half slash that you can see representative of the minimal day placement. Everything else about this calendar is, I don't want to say practically perfect in every way, but it is a fairly nice calendar. Any questions that I can entertain?
Okay, since this is an action item, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the 26-27 school year calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln and a second by Board Member Bateman. Do we have any discussion?
I just want to thank the calendar committee. They did a great job on this, and it really is practically perfect. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of approving the 2026-2027 school calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Just to remind the public, the board had asked the calendar committee to also look at 3 future year calendars with the expectation that if we could find a calendar, we could possibly make a recommendation to future boards that all 3 districts adopt those similar calendars for those subsequent years. So we appreciate the calendar committee, the extra load that they took on to not only create the 26-27, but also 3 additional calendars. And we recommend that the board recommend to future boards to consider those similar calendars across all 3 districts.
I move that we recommend the following calendar drafts, 27-28, 28-29, and 29-30.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Lincoln. Any discussion?
I just want to also say thank you for all of the practically perfect calendars.
Can I interrupt for quickly?
Please
Just one
do.
say, I want to just indicate, again, with these calendars, the changes were the placement of the minimal days. And we had 2 bits of feedback that came from our last board meeting. There was a request to look at and discuss with the committee, do we look at that teacher work day on that first Monday back for those last 2 calendars? The committee, as we discussed it, preferred the option of making the Thursday a minimal day and then recommending that the 2 Fridays be a flexible teacher work day, similar to what we've done in the past, in which the employee works with their supervisor to determine when they would work that day during the course of the break.
I just want to, reiterate, thank you for all of the additional work. I think one of the things that we heard repeatedly from teachers were concerns about, what if I teach in one district but reside in another? How will that work with, being able to be on the same schedule as my own child? Also being able to support PLCs and professional development, especially in our secondary schools where so many singletons are working, across schools. And so really appreciate the additional work that went into this. I know it was a lot more work to go from 1 to 4, but just highly appreciative of how I think this will be beneficial for our staff. So thank you for that investment, Dr. Perkins.
Absolutely, have a tremendous committee. I do also want to call the attention to the back page. That was the request of the board last time to explain the rationale and reasoning to future staff and board members. So that will be included in that recommendation.
Perfect, thank you so much. Any other comments?
Okay, I just saw the back, so thanks for pointing that out. And thank you for the layout on this. This is fantastic, and I love that we'll be able to hand those to new boards and say, this is the work and this is why. So thank you for putting this, and so quickly. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Lincoln to recommend the adoption of the calendars for the 2027-28, 2028-29, and 2029-30 school years. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Thank you for your work and the committee's work on that. That will benefit many students, parents, and employees in years to come. Next item we have is Policy 5185, Sexual Harassment, the student section version of that. We invite our legal counsel, Craig Brinkerhoff, to come forward to answer any questions that the board has. We appreciate the work of the Policy Committee on combining and retiring and updating our policies. And if the board feels so moved, then we would recommend that after your discussion, that you move this to an action item and retire Policy 5185.
This is number 3 of 4 that we plan to retire, dealing with sexual harassment, and then we will keep 1, which is the 7150. So any questions?
I move that we move Policy 5185 to an action item to retire.
Point of clarification, since it's listed as an action item, do we need a motion to make it an action item?
Probably not. I just did.
Good point.
But if you want to if you want to do it, Sarah, you can make the motion.
Okay. Thank you. I move that we approve the retirement of policy 5185, sexual harassment.
Do we have
I'll
a
second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Beeson, a second by Board Member Lincoln. Any discussion?
We had a great discussion today. Kimberly Moore from the district came in and gave us an in-depth, we had an in-depth discussion on sexual harassment. And as we went through the policy, I think members of our policy team could agree that we all felt really comfortable because part of that has been through the Office of Civil Rights that has worked with us and helped us better the policy. And we feel comfortable, I think I can speak for all three of us, but we feel comfortable at the heftiness of the policy. And we feel that by retiring this, it's not going to do anything, but our next policy is going to be very robust and very clear and succinct as far as the sexual harassment policy of what the district will have in the future.
I'll just comment that one of our weaknesses actually in the audit by OCR was that we'd had so many policies, and so this is a strengthening of the policy, not a weakening. And also, I just feel like we talked a lot about the reporting process and the follow-up process has been strengthened, and we just appreciate Craig's work and also how he incorporates the people who know about all these things, and just appreciated our meeting today with Kim. So.
And point of clarification, when I mentioned that the OCR was involved, it's not because we have so many sexual harassment issues in the district. I probably should clarify that. It is because that we could do better with our reportings, our findings, and making sure that we're keeping track of that. Did you want to add anything to that, Craig?
So the main things that we bolstered in the policy that we'll redo with the 7150 is our record keeping is a big piece of that, as well as our supportive measures going forward. In the audit that they did with us, there was some gaps in both of those areas, and so we've tried to shore those up and also put in to practice some additional ways that we can report, especially when it comes to staff-related sexual harassment.
Yeah, and I just also comment that one of the recommendations is that there be greater visibility or access to our public. And so on our website, if you look under families, it's under Title IX. This is where you can find forms, whatever you need, information about any problems that may occur.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Beeson, a second by Board Member Lincoln to approve policy 5185, retire the sexual harassment policy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Yes, we have the discussion item, the fiscal year 2026 school fees and spend plans. Those were reviewed this morning in our financial meeting. Is a discussion item only tonight. We'll bring that back in a future board meeting for approval. I appreciate Jason and his team for their work on that and would direct any questions that you have with respect to the school fees and spend plans for fiscal year 2026 to Jason.
Yeah, in review of the things, I think, does it work on the links there to bring that up? But the school fees, there are no changes in the proposed school fee maximums this year. We were a little unsure what was going to happen with HB 344. Now that that's passed, we were reading that earlier, and that it's going to take place, those restrictions, not this coming school year, but the following, so FY27. So there may be some things that between this board meeting and in 2 weeks, there may be a few minor changes, but the fees should stay the same on the max. And then the other link is for the spend plans. Again, there may need to be some edits that happen in the next 2 weeks, but those are there for the review. The elementary is all on one sheet, and then the secondaries have their own tab for that.
I do want to make note that what you said, these are maximums. And as I looked at, in the secondary schools, the fees in my area, anyway, some of them seemed a little high to me when you're just paying fees and buying a T-shirt. But anyway, in conversation with my principal, he did assure me that these were maximums and not necessarily norms. So anyway, I'm probably going to get a little further information about that, what the reality is compared to what the fee plan is. So.
Yeah, and in practice, so that maximum fee allows it so a certain program couldn't say, well, we're going to do all these things and the actual cost. What should happen on all the fees is what the actual cost is. If it's a max of $50, but the project is a $20, then they should charge those $20 for reimbursement of that.
Yeah, they're not charging the maximum. Yeah, okay.
Jason, I had a question about I noticed that the parking violations tickets that kids sometimes get in high school, that's part of the fees that they can charge. Do we still allow high schools to have their own policies where kids can, I don't want to say work off the ticket, but work with their administration to not pay the ticket?
Practice of that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of what the practice of that is.
Yeah, I would assume that's still the case. They'll work with those students. And
Okay, so there is a way an appeal process, but to not pay the ticket if they, I don't know what, I guess every high school does it differently. Is that, okay.
Okay, so that was a discussion item. So we will move on to our next agenda item, Superintendent, our membership report.
yes, you've received the membership report for the month. I would just call your attention to that. Those trends that we have seen throughout the year continue to be the case. Growth in some areas and declining enrollment in others. So.
Thank you. Okay, it's now time for board member and superintendent reports and information items.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank all those that were involved with the legislative session, especially our legislators who reached out and consulted with us, trying to understand the impact of bills that they were researching and studying and voting on, and what that impact was to students. And I really appreciate that collaborative experience through the legislative session.
Maybe I could just follow up. This session, we tried to emphasize the burden that having so many bills was on school districts. And we talked with leadership, and in many committee meetings, we heard legislators mention that they were holding back on a bill because they realized that they were trying to press pause on the number of bills. And I really appreciate, I think we had, according to some counts, maybe half the number of bills we had last year in education, which I think is very helpful. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate the presentation that was given during study session. We didn't have a whole lot of time to come to a recommendation by the Board of Education on that. I think we will need to bring that back for discussion. One, to decide what, if any, action will be taken between now and the reconfiguration with respect to alternative schools. And two, what would be our recommendation for those future boards with respect to those alternative schools. So that is something, the information was presented, you have that, but we will need a future discussion by the board to determine the will of the board with respect to, again, any changes that would take place between now and the reconfiguration, and then any recommendations for future consideration, recommendations for future boards to consider how they will address. I appreciate the work done by those that presented in study session.
I move that we adjourn. No, sorry. I thought you gave me the look of go ahead, so I did.
See, like, if I missed anybody. You misread the eyes.
Okay, I have a few things. So I think some of us spent more time at the Capitol in the last 3 weeks than anywhere else. And I'd kind of forgotten how much I don't want to say this, how much fun it is really to be up with the people who represent us, chatting about the things that impact us. I'm very appreciative. Joylyn has this very organized brain, and we had a process. And here's how we're gonna get to people, how many people we're gonna get to, the information we're gonna share with them. Also, all your workday at the Hill, amazing. And we got FaceTime with nearly every single one of our representatives. And I think probably for me, the best part of the interaction was that they were all very aware of SB 188 and what that impact would be to our district. And so while they represent a lot of people, it is fun when you're standing outside the chamber and it's us with 500,000 other lobbyists. And I appreciate that they were willing to come out and to make us a priority and to talk to us about the implications of this. And so it is, I think we're all very aware that the world is watching, right? We have one chance to get reconfiguration right. And so just hearing from the representatives in their spaces and, you know, that they're rooting for us was kind of a lovely thing. Also, she's not gonna like this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. My colleague Julie King over here has spent probably eight months, is that fair, of her life, working on this bill with Senator Grover. And just working with all of the municipalities, the mayors, the city council people, city administrators, like it was not a small lift even a little bit. I think it was probably, it's accurate to say it was a full-time job for Julie. And nobody looks out for every single kid district-wide the way she does. And so I appreciate her time and attention and working with all of these city leaders to be able to come up with something that would allow us to move forward. We say that we want 3 strong districts, and the reality is we cannot have 3 strong districts if we are not doing things between now and then to set everybody up. So even though I had just this teeny tiny part of this legislative piece, just want to say thank you to Julie for her efforts and thank you to Senator Grover. One of the things I appreciate most about Senator Grover is he puts his bills out early, which means that everybody and their brother and their cousin can input their thoughts on that. And he really does listen to everybody. And so sometimes there are things that maybe we'd like to see that don't end up happening. But I appreciate that he is mindful of what there's an appetite for people to support. It doesn't do us any good to have a bill if we can't get the support to get it through the House and the Senate. And so I want to thank him for his efforts to give us something that we can really use. Also, thank you to Representative Grecius, who's a floor sponsor. I don't know the last time we saw a sub-5 on an education bill, and I've been following things for a while. So it was a little, I don't know, touch and go for a little while. Not sure how this was going to end up, and I know that it is not what everybody wanted, but I do feel like there are a number of things, like being able to geo-bond in the transition, being able to start some things that will be ready by the time the new districts open, that are going to be hugely helpful to us. Also want to say, back up. I also want to say thank you to Representative Hawkins. I know that he, we feel it to a much lesser degree, but it is a challenging thing when you have constituents. Some people are for it, some people are against it, and you know you're going to disappoint somebody no matter where you vote. And so we had a rather long, involved conversation with him, just talking about some different possibilities in the South and what they can do. And I think sometimes we forget that a lot of our legislators also have students in our schools, and these are their communities. And so they are very invested in helping us get this right. So just thank you to Representative Hawkins. I know it was a tough call for him to make, but I appreciate his willingness to trust us with this to move forward, get it done. Also want to say thank you to Julie and Representative Tesher for HB 191. When he was giving his rationale for it, he did a very specific shout out to Alpine School District and a request for one less thing. So thank you, Julie, on your quest to get rid of the 900,000 things. That felt like a really big one. And then also thank you to Representative Malloy, SB 330. It was about our cosmetology students. Anyways, there was a line about that you couldn't do MTech for us unless you were a high school graduate. And we have a significant amount of students who utilize MTech while they are ASD students, and they don't pay tuition, they only pay fees. And at 9:48 p.m. on Friday night, that got fixed. So thank you to Representative Malloy for that. So cheers to the end of the session. We look forward to Governor Cox signing all the things, and just thank you to all the people across the state that are cheering us on.
Okay, so we do have need of a closed session. Do we have a motion for that?
I move that we enter closed session per Utah Code 524205 to discuss personnel, property, or litigation matters.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln to go into closed session, second by Board Member Bateman. We have to are we doing roll call, or no, we're not doing that anymore? Yes, we're doing roll call. Okay, so if you could do roll call, starting with Board Member Wilson.
Board Member Wilson, aye.
Board Member Lincoln, aye.
Board Member Clement, aye.
Board Member Bateman, aye.
Board Member King, aye.
Board Member Peterson, aye.
Board Member Beeson, aye.
Okay, so we are adjourned into closed session. Thank you all for attending today.